What have you been up to this weekend, Marty?
Friday night, I was in a raid with the Dungeon Dojo people.
Oh my goodness,
fun.
I've heard of them.
Oh, you sneaked in. I didn't
did.
know.
on this very character.
Oh wow. Okay.
Please don't look at the logs. Please don't.
No, I won't look at logs. I didn't realize.
Yeah, Marty was doing some research for us, just undercover.
Undercover agent. No.
He's gonna expose it all on the podcast.
Oh no.
Hello and welcome to Talking WoW, the podcast where we talk about World of Warcraft, believe it or not. And today we are going to be talking about the positive impact of WoW communities. And to do that, we have a special guest. We have the Dungeon Dojo. What is the head of a dojo, actually?
Well, we just rebranded the guys Sensei. So
Sensei. Okay. So the sensei of the Dungeon Dojo, it's Wochi. Hello, Wochi. Welcome to Talking WoW.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody.
And also, we have our co-host, Marty. Hello, Marty.
Oh yeah, I'm here too. I was in the raid.
So yes, we are so excited to talk to you today, Wochi, because Dungeon Dojo is something that I heard about when I started getting back into World of Warcraft around Dragonflight. And since then, I've been sort of on the outskirts of the community, but slowly been getting involved as in just meeting people from the dojo and discovering what a great place that is. And if you don't know, the Dungeon Dojo is an inclusive WoW community that helps players group up for Mythic Plus and normal raids in a safe and non-judgemental environment. So before we get into that, Wochi, how about we just go into a little bit about your background with World of Warcraft and perhaps how long you've been playing and your history in Azeroth.
Absolutely. I started to play at the end of Burning Crusade. I believe that I started when Black Temple was the last raid available at the time. And I just immersed myself. I was very noob in terms of lore, in terms of whatever the game was going to offer me. To the point I even thought that Tauren were menacing creatures like Minotaurs and so on, like evil to the core. And then I realized there are the most pacific creatures in probably WoW, but that's never mind. So I started to play, as I said, at the end of the TBC, and I played very casually. I didn't know what dungeons were, I didn't know what guilds could do together. And after joining a couple, I decided to make my own. And this is why my guild, Infinity Challenge, at the beginning, was created in 2008. And we still exist since then. I always played Shaman. I never stopped playing Shaman. I only basically play Shaman because I realized that I'm a sucker for collections. I'm a sucker for titles, pets, mounts, mogs, and everything. So having them spread all across multiple accounts wasn't really my thing, and I never chased any meta. So even if the Shaman was bad, I still play Shaman because all my achievement points were there, and frankly, that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
And I also, actually, I was in your stream the other day and you were getting ready for the early launch of Diablo 4 and I saw you looking up builds and I saw you looking up Chain Lightning builds for Diablo 4. So you're just like, there might not be a Shaman class in Diablo 4 yet, but Wochi's going to recreate it.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the builds that I was testing was definitely the chain lightning building. So, I mean, if there isn't a Shaman, I'll make sure there is a Shaman. Regardless. But yeah, so I've been playing for quite a while. I think I took like a sabbatical at the end of Pandaria. So I didn't actually experience as a current content Throne of Thunder. But yeah, I played a lot of MMOs in my history. So World of Warcraft wasn't a new thing for me in terms of genre of games because my first one, I believe, was Ultima Online, when we were having
classic
56k modems, and you had to ask your mom if you could play some video games. But yeah, it was an interesting thing, discovering a new MMO that actually caught me a bit off guard at the beginning, and then it just involved with me so much that it became the only game I played for several years. Yeah, it's a long history.
And I think we forget just how long World of Warcraft has been out for sometimes, that when we're playing this currently and how the game has evolved and changed, and it's just so easy to forget, like, oh, you know what, this game's almost 20 years old now, and we've been playing it for a long time, and people have taken breaks from like certain expansions and come back again. And I'm always fascinated when I read about somebody that's like, oh yeah, I played back in Mists of Pandaria and I took a break and now I'm back for Dragonfly. I'm like, that's just mind-blowing, because the game has changed so much as well.
Yeah, it is insane to actually tell to people that stopped this long what is the changes, especially now that we now have a talent system back, and in Pandaria we have the very backbone talent. So it's like now you have all these options. Good luck.
At least there's a little bit of familiarity with, you know, perhaps people that played when the game first launched.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, I remember that talent tree. It's just the same, isn't it? It's always been like that.
Yeah, clearly. Nothing has changed there. All is fine.
So moving forward to the present day.
Yes.
In World of Warcraft, you created a space called the Dungeon Dojo.
Yes.
Why
exactly.
did you do that?
So it started when I first started. It started in my head, at least, when I first started playing World of Warcraft, because I remember being a lonely enhancement shaman in Burning Crusade, and Magister Terras came out as a dungeon, and nobody wanted to play with enhancement shaman.
Oh.
Literally there was no invite. I was spamming the logs and saying, hey, I'm an enhancement shaman looking for Magister Terras, can anybody invite me? And unless it was a guild group, of course, but there was no interest on bringing something that wasn't that strong or that meta or that important in terms of buffs for the group or utility, how we call it now. So the internal LFG system has always been very flawed, not just in terms of the actual utility of the system, but also because, of course, it's driven by the players. And when something is driven by the players, unfortunately, you end up in a situation that relies on choices, and the human choices always try to benefit themselves and not the collective, like we can say. So they're always going to be picking up the best people for the job and not anybody that applies. You know, in a workplace, you can understand that, but in a game, it's basically excluding somebody for doing some content, and is just not fair. And then it marginalizes these people. These people then go and have a bad time into the game because I've got denied. I'm not going to be applying anymore. I'm not going to be doing this content anymore because there's nobody that wants me. And this is a strong feeling, especially now that everybody wants to have this type of experience, and they are denied this type of experience.
Yeah, and people as well want to play perhaps the spec that they want to play as well. And we've seen it so many times in the past where it's like, oh, hey, you can't play as a fire mage, you got to play as a frost mage, or, you know, something like that. And it's really just limiting because there's so many, you know, specializations, and there's so many different builds as well. And I know it's something that me and Marty talk about a lot. People bringing the class and the spec that they feel comfortable with. And when people feel most comfortable and they understand what they're playing, they're obviously going to perform better as well. And sometimes they might perform better than somebody who is playing something they copied off a website because they feel more comfortable with it and they understand it as well. And I think in the player base, sometimes it just gets a bit lost, isn't it? It's like, oh, if you're not playing this build with this class and you have this gear, then automatically you're ruled out of being even considered for something. And that's ridiculous, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is something that you see a lot of list of who is the best DPS, who is the best tank. And the problem of that is that there is no more critical judgment into analyzing these posts and say, well, they might be the best, but because maybe they're played by the best players. So these best players have a pixel perfect timing in all their cooldowns, in all the movements. They know exactly to the T how to play their class, so this is why they are the best, and they make their class being on top. But in reality, for the majority of players, I would say for a good 95-96% of the player base, those lists means nothing, because you're not gonna be ever that perfect. Because if you were that perfect, you were not looking at list. You know you are perfect, so you don't need the list. It's a dog that is trying to eat his own tail, or chasing his own tail in this case. Lists are made for those who want to follow, but not necessarily they apply to everybody.
I have to 100% agree with that, because I've seen it quite a few times where someone has been playing a spec and they're like trying to actually, follow the internet specs, the ones that you're supposed, and then they're like all of a sudden performing worse than they did before they used the internet spec, because they're used to playing with these talents and these abilities, and so they just know them by heart, so they just perform better because they don't have to think, they just do it.
So you created the Dungeon Dojo to counter this
Absolutely
point.
And it stayed it existed for the whole year before it actually exploded, because yes, I made this Discord, this community, and we did good stuff. We did KSM for some people, we have Dungeon, but it really exploded when World of Warcraft announced Season 4 of Shadowlands. And Season 4 Shadowlands was the time when we had the Fated Raids. And one of the decisions, of course, of Blizzard was that the special mount for completing the Fated Raid was only awarded from normal and above difficulty, not for LFR. So there were a lot of people that were there upset because they didn't have anybody to raid with. They couldn't do LFR to win the Slime Kitty, and they were just upset. And we decided, okay, we're going to be running as the dojo every week, every single raid, to make sure that everybody that was feeling left out of this situation was going to get the mount of the choice. And it started, we had the first, I believe, 3 or 4 months with not 3 or 4 months, sorry, 3 or 4 session of raids with like 30 people in the raid every time. And we had, I believe at the end of the Season 4, the count was 65, 66 Slime Kit mounted. And there was even the Honolulu Guild, which now is World 21st, I believe, for this season, that helped us running this dungeon to make sure that the fights were going smooth. We had all the possible fix for key rolls, if in case we needed a healer, in case we needed a big DPS. They were straight into helping as well as, and it was just a beautiful time. Everybody was having fun. We were only raiding normal, so we're not gonna be doing anything too complicated, because I didn't want to overcomplicate, especially for those that never raided, there were quite a lot in the group. And we just wanted to say, okay, these are the strategy, backbone abilities, let's go and have fun. And we just blasted through them. And that's when the dojo actually, I will say, exploded in terms of popularity, because everybody, at least in EU, knew what we were doing. There were also runs for the Season 4 Slime Kitty done by our counterpart NA, because we have NA players in our servers as well. But yeah, that was the big explosion. And on the tail end of that, people now started to ask us to help for KSM. And that's went through the entirety of Season 4. And I believe that we achieved 45, 46 KSM across the entirety, which is not maybe in the scope of how many people there are in the dojo a big number, but it was for us a big number for us that allowed us to put our name out to do more.
Yeah, and I think even, any number like that, I feel like the dojo is just a place that just would celebrate that anyway, because
absolutely,
you have people coming in to the dojo, maybe like myself, who have not really stepped into any Mythic Plus at all, because quite frankly, the game in that department is very intimidating, especially for players that, have no background of that. coming into that, it's a scary place because it can be extremely toxic. And
Oh,
when
absolutely.
if you're not doing something right, the people are very quick to probably tell you that in a way that's not very constructive at all. And I think, a place like the dojo, it's just so refreshing to come in and see that understanding and people putting an arm around you and, helping you enjoy this part of the game, because like you say, this is a game and we're supposed to be enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the important part is, of course, on a side note, that number that I mentioned earlier, it was just the number of KSM I personally helped to achieve. There were many others in the dojo that were performing at the point on the tail end of me trying to fit everybody into a group. Oh, we have 4 tanks. Can we make 4 groups today? Yes, okay. So I run 4 people in. You other people, the other senseis, were there helping. So I at the end of the day, I don't even know how many KSM we did in the end. I know what I helped achieving because I was there physically. And the cool thing is that Raider Ayo also saw what we were doing, and I don't know if it was directly inspired. They will never probably admit it or not. I don't know. I don't. It's not important. But the creation of the Break the Meta event for us was basically a daily routine. We always break the meta in the dojo because literally nobody gets left out because of a spec. And even with that title, I think we were in the region of 100 banners that we helped achieving, because we needed only 2 dungeons at the level 15 and above for qualifying. So everybody that was playing an off meta got into dungeon, out, another one in. It was literally revolving doors. And we keep doing it, and they supported us on that, and they praised that, which is again, getting praises from your peers is always a telltale sign that you're doing the right thing in some ways.
And I quite like the whole break the meta theme anyway, of just encouraging people to play what they want. But I also think thematically it just comes back to, like you, Wochi, when you were trying to find a group as your shaman and you couldn't because of your spec, and it's just like, it started there, and now that's not a thing anymore. It's like, yeah,
full circle.
You bring that wacky spec, and let's see what we can do with it.
Absolutely. I mean, in season 1 of Dragonflight, there was another Break the Meta, and we did our group as Survival Hunter, Guardian Druid, myself as Elemental. There was Arcane Mage and Holy Priest. That was our group, which is we went in completely hardcore with 1 battle rest, and let's hope for the best. It was amazing. It was so much fun.
But as well, it's just like exploring a part of the game of creating almost an extra challenge for yourself, isn't it? And you see people do this in all types of video games where, they're playing Dark Souls with an Guitar Hero guitar or something. And it's just like, okay, we may not be the most optimized specs and classes going into this dungeon, but that does not mean we cannot do it.
Absolutely, yes. It is. It really tells when people want to play just the class they want, because that's what they like. And it is sad when you see people that say, "Oh, the internet told me that my spec is not good, so I'm re-rolling."
Never listen to the internet. That is probably my takeaway from that.
God, yeah, yes. Now listen to the internet.
We've been talking about Mythic Plus, and
yes.
I have been watching you play on Twitch and streaming a lot of Mythic Plus, and it's been really great for me because, again, I'm someone that has not really touched Mythic Plus at all. But your approach to the game is quite unique in some ways. The fact that you're here to educate people, you are a sensei after all.
Mm-hmm.
But Mythic Plus can be quite high pressured. There's that clock ticking and you're trying to reach an objective. How do you keep cool in these moments, and how do you keep your head when things don't go the right way and outwardly communicate that?
So we're not competing with any type of tournament. And at the end of the day, any dungeon that gets completed, even if it is overtime, will still provide something in your vault. So my take is always the same. Even if you don't get any points, if you complete a 16 and above in time, it's going to give you a 441 in the vault. So consider that as, okay, we didn't get any point. I'm not progressing my KSM. but I got an item, and maybe next week this item is gonna be my best in slot. It's gonna be my piece of tier that I don't have to upgrade. It's gonna be my best trinket or my best weapon. And if you move the scope in a positive way, yes, we failed this, but I got something still. Everything else, it becomes easier. It becomes easier to the mind, and you're not stressing too much for a timer. Unless, of course, that was the dungeon that was giving you the KSM, which is, we missed it, but we can do another one.
Yeah.
And the dungeons are still gonna be there. The dungeons are there for us to do whenever you want, how many times we want. We failed one, we jump on the boat, we do another one. That's all you can do.
I know so many players just don't get that. The just whole aspect of, well, yeah, but if we complete this, we get the item, and then next week we're a little bit stronger, and then we have a better chance. And like you say, taking that step back and seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah, I love that answer as well, because that's basically what I'm having to deal with in my guild currently, is that these people just want to push, and I'm like, yeah, and they have more time to play than I have, so if they want to push with, I cannot keep up with that. Sure, it's fun for you, but it's not fun for me, because I just want to let's slow down a little bit, let's just do stuff and fill up that vault and everybody have fun together, so
Absolutely.
So then I told Marty about the Dungeon Dojo.
Yes, thank you.
And now we are here.
And now we are here talking about it.
Full circle,
Yeah,
Marty,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Full circle.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Mythic Plus. We're going to take a little change of direction here, Wochi, because I know you play a lot of Mythic Dungeons. Right now, we are in Season 2 of Dragonflight. How do you feel the state of Mythic Plus is right now?
In my opinion, the state of Mythic Plus right now is in a much better context, in a much better world now, because of the changes that they applied on Season 2 now. It makes much easier to run keys without overcomplicating too much the already complicated dungeons that some of them are, and it makes it much more accessible to everybody. And I'm going to be explaining myself in a bit more. In Season 1 of Dragonflight and before, reaching level 10, you're already dealing with a very complicated dungeon and 4 different affixes. One of them being the one what we call seasonal, which was changing from season to season, and it was going to be like a high risk, high reward type of affix to deal with. I know, kill an ad in a certain time, everybody gets a buff. Okay. In Season 2, they scrapped entirely the system and removed the seasonal affix. There's no more seasonal affix. And they reduced the number of total affixes that you're ever going to get in a key. So the base affix every week is going to be either tyrannical or fortified. And then at level 7 of a dungeon, you will get the first one. So until level 7, you only have to deal with 2 affixes. And at level 14, you're going to get the third and final affix. That means that at the very best, you have only to deal with 3 affixes, one of them being a bit harder than the other 2, of course, but is much less on the brain of people to deal with, because the mechanics of some of the fights are very complicated, and the overlaps of some of these affixes can cause wipes in multiple ways. But the cool thing about everything is that since they did this system, the requirement for achieving Keystone Master, which is a score of 2000 to get the mount, you can just run level 13s and level 14s to get that score. Which means that if you want to run all the level 13s with one affix, you can still do it, and then on those easier dungeons, you just pop a couple of 14s and you get the score. It made for everybody much easier to achieve the mount than was in the past.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know that they lowered it to 13, 14. That's amazing.
The lowering was already Season 1, but you still have to do, 13s and 14s with 4 affixes. But now is much easier because it's only 3 affix. And they removed some of them that were some of the worst possible things for classes. Yeah, there is discussion now that there is a need of more classes with CC that deals with new affixes now. But I will take any new ones above Quaking, anyone above Explosive, I was celebrating with dances around the house when that happened, because those two are legitimately something of the worst things that can happen in a dungeon.
I will have to say though that I actually don't mind explosive, but because when I usually do those, I usually were doing it on a Restro Druid, so I can easily just you know, Moonfire spam them, and then it would be no problem. So
you see, that was before season 1. Doing season 1, the rework that they wanted to do in season 2, you couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Because they were giving more health to the explosive balls, and you couldn't just tap, shock, gone. You actually had to actively DPS them.
That doesn't sound like fun, no.
No, it wasn't really fun. We tried it on PTR, and it was legitimately the worst.
One of the new ones that I actually do like is the one that we're having currently with the, what are they called? The Spectres?
Afflicted?
Yeah, the Afflicted, because I went in on my my main, which is a Holy Priest, and there was nobody else who could dispel, and there was nobody else who could heal. It was like a pure DPS group I got into, and they asked me if I could handle this, and I was like, I'll do my best. But I think in the whole dungeon, I missed one, and I think that was really good fun, because what I sometimes get as a healer is that I'm healing and then there's nothing to heal and I'm just standing there, and then I should probably switch and do some DPS. But this actually gave me a little bit of an extra game mechanic too, so it was good fun for me, that one.
But there is a thing that with the talent tree that we have right now, many classes have the ability and the utility to deal with these type of things. And it becomes almost, you know that you can do that. Oh, I didn't know. So again, we are, as a dojo, educating classes, in this case players, on how to utilize the entire pool of their ability in order to overcome situation. Because nobody's telling these people that they can do these things, because if you join a POG, you are expected to know. And that's the problem. You are expected to know, and if you don't know, you are just a dead weight. And then what that happens then is the person that is called a dead weight just leave and never return again. We are there to educate. This is why we make sure that everybody has, a list of things that, shamans can decurse these things. Good. I can dispel poison. There's another one that can heal up. I can throw an off heal if I see that the healer is struggling. I will stop DPSing a little bit just to make sure that the group can deal with these things. Those people that do not spec into this talent because they don't want to DPS, they are there just for their own sake. They are there for just their own progress and their own achievement. They don't think as a team. They think, I want to go in and out in 20 minutes. Are you with me? No, I'm leaving.
I want to sit here all day and listen to Wochi's wise words, because I'm just like sitting here like, oh my goodness, just in awe right now. But before we sign off, I have a question for both of you. And we'll start with the Dungeon Dojo Sensei. How would you improve Mythic Plus Dungeons, or the system around it, if you could, or if there is a need to? Or are we at a place where it's like, nope, we've reached perfection?
I think that at the moment we're not in a perfection mode, because there's still something for some of the affixes or some of the timings that these affixes come out that can be improved to avoid overlap. I'm going to make an example now. During season 4 of Shadowlands, there was Iron Docks, and on the last boss, the one that pushes you back, and then you have to crawl back hiding because of the cannon, there was a nasty overlap that says, I'm going to push you back, you're stunned, and then quaking comes, and everybody dies. And I had to fix that, because to avoid these type of overlaps that are out of the control of the player. So what I would like to see more going forward is that these type of overlaps should never happen, ever. So that the dungeon has to be tested in the worst possible condition to make sure that any timer doesn't cause a wipe that is not a mistake of the group. If it is a mistake of the game that causes the wipe, the run isn't fun, because you can't control this type of things. You can't plan ahead of this type of things. So that's definitely something that has to be modified and controlled in a better way. But the other thing that I think that can be improved is to provide a guide inside the game. We have the dungeon journal, but we have a dungeon journal just for the bosses that tells you the abilities and everything else. There should be a quick tool tip for every dungeon that says, okay, critical mobs to keep in mind on how to deal. Okay, these mobs has to be interrupted. This ability has to be CC'd. This mob has to be feared. And if you have a list of all these things, you will not need an external website that tells you how to do a route. You know that if you want to go through this way, you need to make sure that you have interrupts, dispels, poison, or whatever, and you can plan ahead. We have in-depth guides on the internet, but we have still an instrument inside the game that doesn't provide you all the information to achieve, I would say, a completion of something.
I'd like to piggyback on your idea, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
I want to create a in-game location, probably in Pandera, and it's called the Dungeon Dojo. And you can fly there, and the senseis there will run these simulations with different types of bosses that are currently on the Mythic rotation or types of trash, and you can just do that in a non-dungeon environment with groups of people and, test things out.
I mean, you're basically saying we want the hologram room of Star Trek, but in the it was the Trials of Pandaria, the one you go in as a healer and you have to heal a mob. So basically, there is already the technology. You just have to talk to the person and say, I want to simulate the trash packs in Brackenhide Hollow. Loaded them in.
And every time somebody does that, Wochi gets 10 gold.
Well, we can work it out if you want to do this.
All right, Marty, top that brilliant idea.
I mean, I think all my ideas are very selfish. It's probably increase my drop rate for gear because I feel like I never get anything. Yeah, I don't know. I had another idea as well, but that's gone now. This is the most important part.
Also, Mythic Dead Mines.
Mythic Dead Mines... I did run in the past an idea, but I believe that it could have been easily abused and make this idea itself a little bit more trivial. In the tournament realm, when you have access to that for events like MDIs and so on, you can create your own key. So you can decide the level, you can decide the dungeon, the affix, the affixes in this case, and you just take the key, go to the dungeon, and run the dungeon. A system like this, in which you can choose the combinations among a pool for every week, will make, I believe, a little bit more easier for everybody to just... I have a group that doesn't have any dispels. Can we try to get the dungeon that has the least requirement for that this week, so we can work out our team in a better way? But I believe that this probably, knowing the WoW player base, probably can be abused in just running one dungeon with 2 affixes every week and then never seen anything else ever. But, there's a balance there.
I don't think the WoW player base would do that. They would
really
definitely not do that.
I mean, I think something like that could work if it's like a limited amount of time, so you can, pick your own dungeon or something like that. Because I think if everyone can do that, then everyone will just run the easiest dungeons over and over and over again, right? To get the gear or get the vault filled up and stuff like that. So,
absolutely, yes.
But I like the idea of being able to pick. That would be cool.
Yeah, because when I did one of the last events organized by Red Rayo, I was the one making the keys that the staff of Red Rayo was telling me, and they said, okay, you need to do this, and that, and let's fly. We were organized. Okay, I have a portal for Dalar, and you have a portal, so we can summon each other. It was organization. It was perfect, but you could craft the key that you wanted. That's the cool part. So the technology exists. We just want it now.
We're going to stop there before we give Blizzard too many good ideas that they will get for free. But what an amazing chat it has been with Wochi about the Dungeon Dojo and about Mythic Plus. Wochi, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your knowledge.
And thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. And we will include all links for Wochi and the Dungeon Dojo. If you want to come and check that out yourself, I know you would be so welcome there if you are looking for a place to run Mythic Plus and the occasional raid as well. I just know Wochi, I'm speaking on behalf of you, but I just know everyone is so welcome there,
Oh,
and it's such
absolutely.
a great place to come and play Warcraft.
Absolutely.
in.
Thank you. Absolutely,
All
yes.
right, who wants to boost me in Freehold +2?
Whatever you want.
I have been Tom. That has been Marty. We've been talking WoW.
Thanks for tuning in, champion! Did you enjoy this episode of Talking WoW? If so, why not drop a review on your podcast catcher of choice, or leave us a comment? You can find Talking WoW on Twitter or YouTube over at Talking WoW. Hope to see you again soon!